Hi everyone. In this video, we'll get started with the Spring framework. Um, so we want to first understand about framework. What are its advantages, disadvantages, and why Spring Boot is being used a lot nowadays. And then create a quick Hello World program with Spring Boot, and take it ahead. Okay. So as we always do, we want to get the theory from ChatGPT, so that we can run through those points, and few points we can also uh, you know uh, try to replicate that in our code to see if those things are working. So what I did is I just quickly uh, uh, asked this question: Spring versus Spring Boot, to ChatGPT, and it came up with this answer. So Spring Framework are basically both parts of Spring ecosystem. Spring Boot is an extension of Spring Framework. Spring Framework obviously is a comprehensive and an older framework from Java. And it provides a lot of functionalities like dependency injection, which we have already seen, aspect-oriented programming. If you are really interested in knowing about AOP, you can go ahead and do that yourself. And then configuration, flexibility, and so on and so forth. So these are the various advantages of Spring. But on the other hand, since Spring is more flexible and makes setup and configuration more complex and difficult, that is why Spring Boot was introduced. Um, and previously, as you have seen in this point, doing configuration also in Spring Boot was very much complex. That became easy with Java-based annotations like on @configuration, @bean, etc. Otherwise, it was still even harder. Okay. So built-in annotations have helped a bit. And then Spring Boot has even helped further to decrease the configuration and setup load on developers, so that few things could be very fast and can happen at the backend. Okay. So, I already mentioned why Spring Boot was introduced. And obviously, there are advantages and disadvantages for both. So that also we'll look at quickly. So Spring Boot, what are the key features? It provides auto configuration, embedded servers. By auto configuration, we mean that you can configure your application based on the dependencies you have added to your project. Okay. So it basically, let's say if you add Spring Boot starter web dependency, it auto configures components like servlet container, Spring MVC, and so on and so forth, whatever is required for that particular functionality. And then Spring Boot provides embedded servers like Jetty, Tomcat, etc., so that you can run Spring Boot as a standalone Java application without the need to deploy it on any application server. Okay. And it provides a lot of starter dependencies, reducing the amount of manual dependency management you need to do. Okay. Uh, and it helps you monitor and manage your application a little bit better, such as providing, components like, or features like metrics, health checks, externalized configuration, etc., which we'll look at in the future videos. So basically, Spring Boot, emphasizes more convention over configuration, so that you quickly get started with your application without the need to configure and set up a lot of things at your end, and then you get started. Okay. So if you want to quickly start a new project with minimal configuration, you do it with, Spring Boot. Okay. So these are the key differences: extensive configuration needed, XML, Java based annotations; minimal configuration due to auto configuration. Okay. Learning curve is more steeper. It is easier to learn. Comes with embedded servers, requires external servers. It is more flexible because you are only doing the configuration. It gives you the flexibility to provide, n number of configuration, so that flexibility increases in that case. Here, it's more, you already have a few defaults in place. So obviously it's less flexible, but faster to develop. Okay. Suitable for large enterprise level applications, ideal for microservices, REST APIs, medium-sized apps. Okay. And anyway, we want to create a microservices tutorial for beginners. So, obviously the idea is to use Spring Boot only. And since it's a new framework, so obviously it makes more sense to use it to show how it's different from Spring. Okay. Uh, so that's pretty much about Spring and Spring Boot. Hope it's clear why you use Spring and why you can use Spring Boot. Uh, so if you're working on a very large complex application where you need full control over every aspect of the configuration, then you can still use Spring Framework without Spring Boot. Okay. But if you want to start a new project and you want to get started quickly with minimal setup, you can quickly use Spring Boot. Okay. Example, when you are developing microservices or REST APIs. Okay. So this was pretty much about the introduction on Spring and Spring Boot. Let me uh, you know, uh, basically end this video right here. Next particular lecture will create a quick hello world program in Spring Boot and take it from there. Thanks.